if you want to, if you've got a question, just put up your hand and we'll integrate it as we go along. But we'll start with the first question so that you're not put on the spot right away. And I've decided the first question is, what is our first specific memory of each other? And I'll answer first because I was already a teenager when Andrew was born, so I do have a specific memory. And it is that he was born on May the 8th, but he is obviously a very late and explicitly accidental addition to the family, which means that our mother was pretty old when he was born. She was nearly 42, which in today's terms really is no big deal, but back then in the late 60s it was considered pretty extreme, and so her pregnancy was monitored and she took all kinds of care. And she had to have steak every day, which we couldn't really afford, but everything was very careful. And then when Andrew was born, she had to stay in hospital for 11 days, being sort of monitored thereafter. Normally now you get thrown out right away. But so my specific first memory is on May the 19th, 11 days later. The rest of the family drove to the hospital to bring them home in my dad's Rover 90. So we drove to the hospital in Birmingham and we picked them up. And back then there was zero health or safety or anything like that. So he just sat on somebody's lap, I think. My mother and father in the front. Then now 4 boys in the back. No seatbelts or anything. And we drove back to our house. And lining the way on the way back, every single yard of the route, which was about 2 miles, every yard of the route was a crowd on both pavements, about 10 deep, cheering and waving. And that is literally true, because the day before, Saturday the 18th of May, West Bromwich Albion had won the FA Cup. And we were about 20 yards ahead of their open bus procession back from New Street Station. We didn't live in West Bromwich, but the road from the centre of Birmingham to West Bromwich was the road that took us home. So Andrew's first introduction to the world was crowds of 10 deep cheering and waving and shouting. And he was this little tiny baby, and that is my specific first memory.
I don't quite remember back that far, but as you say, I did come along a little later and was definitely a surprise. And the only thing that I remember being told was that I had my 3 brothers had already arrived, and for some reason my mother became convinced that I was going to be a girl, and so they had picked out that I was going to be called Rachel. So I arrived, I wasn't a girl. They didn't feel that Rachel was appropriate at that time. And so they had to quickly come up with a name. And so I was born on May the 8th, VE Day, and our father had fought in the war. So he had the idea I should be called Victor. But my mother squashed that idea. She wasn't having it. She didn't think that was a very good name at all. So in their haste to come up with a name, they were quite big on the royal family. So they come up with Andrew. So instead of naming me Victor, they named me after a paedophile. So thanks, Mum and Dad. But I think probably my first memory would be I couldn't tell you exactly how old I was. I was pretty young. Lee had already left home and was at university and had come back for a family visit. And I can't remember what I did. It was some minor infraction, which was fairly common. I was in trouble. I was getting yelled at by her dad. And Lee stepped in and stood up for me. And no one had ever done that before. It had always been, because he was out of the house, it was always me, feeling like a complete alien, a complete outsider, surrounded by these people who had nothing to do with me, who didn't think like me, who didn't do anything like me. And here was somebody standing up for me, and I remember thanking him and him saying, "Hey, don't worry, I've got your back," and me, tiny little kid, going, "Yeah, I've got yours." And, it's been that way ever since, actually, and it in a way has led to us being here today.
Yeah, I mean, we were